Welcome back. It's time to answer our special program on the sideline of the World Economic Forum 2023. The world faces huge challenges like climate change and the pandemic. Billions of dollars are urgently needed to support research and development into solutions. And that's what philanthropies like Melinda Gates Foundation have been doing. I've been talking to the CEO of the foundation, and here is our conversation. Mark, long time no see. How wonderful it is to see you here at the World Economic Forum.
Oh, wonderful to see you too. It's been far too long.
Yes, far too long, but let's start by talking about the theme of the World Economic Forum. I know it's also dear to your heart, to the foundation's heart, cooperation in a fragmented world. What about cooperation?
Well, cooperation is a word that's used a lot, but we're not seeing much of it, frankly, at the moment, around some of what we see at the Gates Foundation as the biggest global challenges right now. After 2 decades of unprecedented progress in health, in poverty reduction, in education, China was a global leader in that itself, but also in helping other countries learn from that example. COVID has helped stop that. The last 2 years have seen us stalling, and while it's great to see a lot of discussion around how we revitalize that, what's been missing is a little bit of where is the concrete action, whether it's in the health space, the climate space, the broader economic growth and financial inclusion, and that's what I'm here to really try and drive through.
Words translated into real actions for the right direction, as you said, Mark. About that, so much funding needed in our world, about research into basic science and research related to some of the crises we're facing, health crisis, nutrition crisis, food crisis related to that. How is the state of these financial support right now?
Yes, so if you take something like global research into health and development, for the diseases that most affect the world's poorest, infectious diseases, still the areas like malaria or HIV or TB, or even some of the response after COVID, we've actually seen a decline in research and development in that for those diseases, if you can believe that. So coming out of the worst global pandemic, we're not seeing research and development investment at the scale that's needed. Now we at the Gates Foundation, I today am announcing a new budget, a record budget of $8.3 billion, which is by far the highest we've ever done, and a significant portion of that budget is going on exactly that kind of research and development for the public good, not just in health, but also in areas like climate adaptation, where you get drought and flood resilient crops. But it's striking, when you raise it with people and you raise it with governments in the public sector, no one disagrees that it's important, but everyone's so distracted by the 4 or 5 other crises right now, we're not seeing those concrete investments at a time they are critically needed.
Concentrate. That's very key, it seems you're trying to say. But without trust, it's very difficult, isn't it? So I see the role of philanthropy in that regard. What do you think might be the role when we are trying to build more cooperation of philanthropy right now?
Well, I think we have several roles. We are, first and foremost, we can be a catalyst by putting in the down payment investments, by showing the models of things that work, by showing there are exciting new tools available in areas like malaria or even pneumonia or tuberculosis, which they are. These are diseases that have killed millions of people over the years. We're at the edge of some of the most important scientific breakthroughs we've ever seen, but we need to crowd other resources into that so that we can do that proof point. The second is actually by building some of the partnerships. We have the relationships between governments that are sometimes a little suspicious of how to do this, with the private sector, with some of the big research institutes and universities. For example, we have this great partnership we do with Tsinghua University and the government of Beijing around a global health drug discovery institute. And so what we can do is prove these models that then try and show people that it's actually worth doing these investments because we're going to get the results and outcomes. And I think that's a critical role of philanthropy, but large though we are, we cannot achieve results at scale. That requires government and the private sector to come in at scale and work together.
The so-called stakeholders, as they always say at the World Economic Forum. Mark, another thing related to this, of course, is the health issue. You mentioned about that, how much funding not increasing, but rather decreasing, surprisingly. But if you look at the COVID, it's not gone yet, even though it become an epidemic. However, we are likely to see more subvariant. Nobody knows where it's going. So, what about the assessment from the foundation about how much resources to put into related research and development to support developing and emerging economies particularly?
Yes, so we certainly need that on pandemic preparedness generally, and so forth, both to continue dealing with the COVID crisis, which is still with us, but to make sure the world is better prepared for what will inevitably be another global pandemic. We do need a larger global effort. That the G20 actually recommended, with China's support, a support of $10 billion a year globally. That could include some support to the World Health Organization, that could include support to monitoring and mapping diseases around the world. Unfortunately, the world has not been able to raise those resources to date. So even in the midst of all of this, and we know how much damage COVID has caused, currently there's been a contribution. There is a new fund that's been set up at the World Bank, but currently it has $1.6 billion. We've contributed to it. Many other governments have. The G20 supports it, but we need to make that 10 times bigger. And it feels like a very cheap down payment, given if this is going to prevent the kind of disruption that we've seen from COVID in the future, we should be doing it. But that's yet another example of when you talk to partners, everyone agrees on the importance of it, but it's been very difficult to then get people to act cooperatively and collectively and put the resources together to implement.
That seems to have a lot to do with what people make of what have gone through over the past 3 years. What about that collective memory, if I could use that word?
Yes, so I think there's a balance between collective memory, which is why people understand this is important, and the fact that the crisis has been so all-consuming for, all of us at an individual level were affected by it. Everyone at a global level has been affected by it, and so they've been so focused on their own specific issues, domestic pressures in countries, whatever country it is. The debate in the United States might be the debate in Nigeria, the debate in India, the debate in China, often are focusing on what is being done here right now, and I think that makes it difficult to do both discussions, but the world should be. Certainly a gathering like this, the World Economic Forum, is exactly the place to say this is not an either-or. We can address these important domestic issues of addressing inequality and other challenges, and take action against these big global needs, whether it's health, whether it's climate, whether it's broader investments in poverty reduction.
Talking about multitasking, the foundation has been multitasking in so many different parts of the world, try to address the specific needs of that country and the region. Your cooperation with China, as you mentioned, Mark, has been time-tested. So how do you see, now people's curiosity about China, about what China is thinking, how it's likely to interact with the rest of the world, and how do you think your foundation and philanthropy as a result can interact and work with these trends and also actions?
Yes. Well, clearly we live in an environment where there are much greater geopolitical tensions in the world on multiple levels. But we come at it from a simple perspective as a foundation and say our mission is a world where every person deserves the chance to a healthy and productive life. And we believe that whether it's with China, the United States, the European Union, whether we're working in Africa or elsewhere in Asia, this is something that is a shared agenda. And we've certainly found that in the past in our work in China. This year is actually the 15th anniversary of our China office.
Congratulations.
I just sent a message to celebrate that, and I'm hoping to visit later this year. And what we found through that time, we've both done work domestically in China initially to work on shared priorities like tuberculosis and HIV and tobacco prevention. But now what we have are models where we're learning from. China, for example, successfully eliminated malaria in the last 2 years. We've been working to try and take some of those models and see how can they apply in African countries like Tanzania. We've been working on some of the sort of research and development around some of the new vaccines and related tools and say, can these be ones that help work in the developing world. We worked with Chinese partnerships, for example, to develop a Japanese encephalitis vaccine, which now serves millions of people across South Asia. So what we're always looking for is concrete examples of partnership that help people. And we find that China has been a strong and engaged partner, and we believe that will continue. But we also believe it's a platform for global collaboration and cooperation. This is not a zero-sum world, and the issues we work on, like health, like development, like climate, are ones that we all have to work on together to succeed.
Mark, you probably have noticed the tremendous amount of public gesture and also speeches from China and Chinese leaders over the past few weeks have been focusing on development. And the collective memory and efforts of the 1.4 billion Chinese people in reform and opening up is extremely strong. So how do you see these factors are likely to melt into the cause that you just suggested?
Yes, well, some of it is identifying areas of collaboration. Obviously, China's been leading big new global development initiative that worked with a particular focus on Africa and Asia. I recently had some meetings with the Chinese Development Agency, SIDCA. We have a range of other partnerships there. So what I see us doing is really taking those and making them very concrete around specific deliverable projects in areas where it might be development of new drought-resistant forms of rice that we're working together in West Africa, or whether it's new financial products or things. But what that is a very exciting platform that we can now build on. Even at this time of challenges, we're actually more optimistic than ever that there are concrete innovations we can work on with China, with other countries, to actually show we can accelerate health and development again.
Sounds very encouraging. My final question for you, the role of women. As we see, the world has recognized that, but how to embrace it and encourage it and nurture it, that's the issue. Your thoughts briefly.
Probably the single most important catalyst for development there is. I already hosted a panel here yesterday around women's economic empowerment, but talking about how we need to shift the narrative of women's economic empowerment to one of women's economic power. It's women's agency. We know if we can provide extra tools, whether it's credit, finance, education, agency, that helps lift up everybody. It's the best economic generator. It's the best way to ensure healthy and productive children, because mothers with income will invest in their children. And so that's why gender equality has become one of the largest priorities of the Gates Foundation.
We have been hearing encouraging voices coming from your foundation, including with the co-chairs of your foundation, and of course Mark, about providing clear-minded suggestions over the past few years. Now we are likely to celebrate the Chinese New Year of the Rabbit. I wonder whether you could, on behalf of your foundation, say something to our Chinese audience, if it's okay.
Well, I would like to wish everyone listening and across China, including our employees and our partners, a very happy and prosperous New Year and a Year of the Rabbit from all of us at the Bill Melinda Gates Foundation.